My name is Emma, and I spent years building a life with the man I thought I knew, until he shattered it all with one betrayal. He left me for his secretary, took everything I had, and laughed while I struggled to pick up the pieces. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom. You either stay there, or you rise. I chose to rise. I rebuilt my life, became one of the top real estate agents in New York, and swore I would never let anyone walk over me again. And just when I thought I had left the past behind, fate threw me a delicious twist. My ex showed up at my open house. Broke, desperate, and needing my help. He thought he could manipulate me again. That I was still the same woman he left behind. But this time, I was the one in control. And I was about to teach him a lesson he'd never forget. I wasn't always the woman I am today. There was a time when I was naive enough to believe in love, in loyalty, in the kind of partnership that could weather any storm. Lucas and I met in college. He was charming, ambitious, the kind of man who could talk his way out of anything. And I was the supportive girlfriend. The one who stayed up late helping him prepare for law school exams. The one who believed in him when no one else did. I worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat while he chased his dream of becoming a high-powered attorney. Every milestone he reached, I was right there beside him, celebrating his victories like they were my own. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. The long nights at the office turned into nights he didn't come home. The affectionate words were replaced with cold indifference. And then came the gaslighting, the way he made me question my own instincts, my own worth. You're overreacting, Emma. Sophia is just my assistant. You're being paranoid. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But when I found the text messages, the ones he forgot to delete, reality hit like a wrecking ball. The late night, work meetings. The weekend, business trips. It was never about the job. It was about her. I confronted him, my hands shaking as I held up the proof. And you know what he did? He laughed, shrugged, didn't even have the decency to deny it. I guess you just weren't enough for me, he had said, his voice flat, emotionless. Those words cut deeper than any blade. And just like that, the life I had built, the one I sacrificed everything for, crumbled to dust. But Lucas wasn't done yet. When he filed for divorce, he made it his mission to leave me with nothing. He weaponized his legal knowledge, dragging me through a brutal court battle, trying to strip me of every dollar, every ounce of dignity. But here's the thing about being underestimated. It makes your victory that much sweeter. I refused to let him break me. Instead, I channeled every ounce of pain, every moment of betrayal, into something he never saw coming. I threw myself into real estate, worked harder than I ever had in my life. I built a reputation, an empire, and while Lucas and Sophia were busy reveling in their affair, I was busy becoming someone they could never touch. Before I share what happened next, the moment that turned the tables in the most spectacular way, I want to connect with you. My amazing viewers, where are you watching from? Drop your country's flag in the comments below. And if you've ever had to rebuild yourself after being knocked down, hit that like button, because this story is just getting started. Success is the best revenge. I had spent years rebuilding my life, turning my pain into power, and crafting a career that gave me everything Lucas once told me I could never have. I had left the past behind, or at least, that's what I thought, until he walked back into my life, uninvited. The open house was in full swing, attracting New York's elite, penthouse views, marble countertops, a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a 5-star restaurant. Everything was staged to perfection, every detail, immaculate. And then the door opened. Lucas and Sophia stepped in like they belonged there. But they didn't. Not anymore. I took in every detail. The way Lucas's once pristine tailored suit now looked slightly worn. The shadows under his eyes. The stiffness in his posture. He was trying too hard to look like the man he used to be. And Sophia? Gone was the arrogant smirk. The confidence of a woman who thought she had won. Instead, she looked anxious, her fingers clutching onto her purse like it was a lifeline. I could already tell. They weren't here because they wanted to be. They were here because they had no choice. Emma, Lucas greeted, his voice forced, as if saying my name tasted bitter. I hear business has been good for you. I smiled, slow and deliberate. Oh, you could say that. He glanced around, pretending to admire the place. But I saw through it. The truth was, Lucas wasn't in a position to buy anything in this building, or anywhere remotely close to it. We're looking for something smaller, Sophia added quickly, her voice uneasy. Smaller. The word hung in the air, heavy with meaning. So, the rumors were true. Lucas's once thriving law firm was crumbling. Clients had left, lawsuits were piling up, and the money? Well, it looked like it was running out. I should have walked away. I should have let them stew in their misery. But where's the fun in that? Smaller? I repeated, tilting my head. Well, I do have a few listings that might suit your new situation. Lucas's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Sophia shifted uncomfortably. I led them through the tour, keeping my voice cool, professional, but I made sure every subtle jab landed exactly where it was meant to. This kitchen is a dream. Though I imagine you're looking for something a little less extravagant? The master suite is quite spacious. But of course, I understand downsizing is a priority for you now. Oh, and this neighborhood? Exclusive, high-profile clients only. But don't worry, I have some properties that might fit a more conservative budget. By the time the tour ended, Lucas's face was red with barely concealed rage. And Sophia looked like she wanted to be anywhere but here. Cut the act. Emma, Lucas finally snapped. Do you have something or not? I folded my arms, meeting his glare with an easy smile. Oh, I have plenty, but the question is, can you afford it? That was the final blow. I saw it in his eyes, the moment the reality sank in that he had lost. Lucas, the man who once took everything from me, was now standing in front of me, humiliated, desperate, and powerless. And for the first time in my life, I realized something. I didn't just survive him. I had won. The satisfaction of watching Lucas squirm should have been enough. I should have left it at that. Let karma do the rest. But then, something unexpected happened. A few days after the open house, my assistant buzzed me. Emma, there's a Sophia here to see you. She says it's urgent. I almost laughed. Sophia? The same woman who stood beside Lucas while he tore my life apart. I should have sent her away. But curiosity got the best of me. She walked into my office looking nothing like the confident, polished woman Lucas had left me for. Her hair was unkempt. Her designer bag gripped so tightly her knuckles were white. She hesitated before speaking, her voice a quiet plea. I need your help, Emma. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. Oh, and why would I help you? Sophia? She swallowed hard, avoiding my gaze. Lucas, he's not who I thought he was. I almost laughed at the irony. You don't say. She let out a shaky breath, finally meeting my eyes. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but I don't know who else to turn to. Lucas is losing everything. The firm is collapsing. He's drowning in debt, and when he gets desperate, he turns cruel. She paused, voice trembling. I thought I was different. I thought he loved me. But now I see, he just needed someone to control. I studied her carefully. If she was lying, she was a damn good actress. But I knew that look in her eyes. I had worn it once too. So, what do you want from me? Help me leave him. The words hung between us. A few years ago, I would have reveled in this moment, Sophia. The woman Lucas chose over me. Now sitting in my office begging for my help. But I wasn't that person anymore. I had outgrown my bitterness. And more importantly, I saw an opportunity. All right, I said slowly. But if I help you, you have to help me too. She frowned. What do you mean? I leaned forward. Lucas is going down. But I don't just want him to fail. I want to make sure he never gets back up. And for that, I need information. Everything you have on him. His finances. His clients. Any dirty little secrets he's been keeping. If I'm going to help you disappear from his life, I need ammunition to make sure he never comes looking for you. She hesitated, but only for a second. Then she nodded. Deal. What happened next was almost too easy. Sophia gave me everything. Emails. Hidden financial records. Details of under-the-table deals Lucas had made to keep his firm afloat. He wasn't just broke. He was corrupt. And all it took was a carefully placed tip to the right authorities to send everything crumbling down. Within a week, Lucas's firm was under federal investigation. His assets were frozen. His reputation? Ruined beyond repair. I heard from mutual acquaintances that clients were fleeing. His business partners distancing themselves. And the press was circling like vultures. And just when I thought it couldn't get any better, Sophia delivered the final blow. She left him, took what little she could and walked away, leaving him with nothing, just like he once tried to do to me. The last I heard, Lucas was drowning in legal battles, desperate for a way out. And me? I was exactly where I was meant to be, successful, powerful, and untouchable. It's funny how life works. Lucas thought he was the one who held all the power. He thought he could break me, leave me with nothing, but in the end, the only person he destroyed was himself. Lucas was finished. His firm had collapsed. His accounts were frozen, and his reputation, once polished and formidable, was now nothing more than a cautionary tale. The headlines told the story better than I ever could. Prominent attorney under federal investigation for fraud. Lucas Miller's empire crumbles amidst corruption allegations. His name had become synonymous with disgrace. I had expected to feel triumphant. And in a way, I did. But more than that, I felt free. For years, Lucas had been a shadow in my life. The ghost of a betrayal I once thought I'd never recover from. But now, he was just another man who had burned too many bridges and finally run out of places to hide. It was over, or so I thought. One evening, as I was finalizing a multi-million-dollar deal in my office, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but something about the number made me pause. Against my better judgment, I picked up. Emma. His voice was different, hollow. For a second, I almost didn't recognize him. This wasn't the Lucas I had once known, the man who always carried himself with an air of arrogance, who spoke like the world owed him something. This was a man who had lost everything. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, he said, voice hoarse, but I need your help. I let the silence stretch between us, waiting for the words to sink in. Lucas was asking me for help. And why would I help you? My voice was calm, detached. Because you know what it's like to lose everything. I almost laughed. He really thought we were the same? That we had both suffered equally? That losing his career and money compared to the way he had ripped my life apart all those years ago? No, Lucas, I said evenly. I know what it's like to be betrayed. To be abandoned. To be treated like I was nothing. You did this to yourself. He let out a slow breath, as if bracing for my rejection. I don't know where to go from here. For a brief moment, I considered hanging up, leaving him to figure it out the way I had been forced to. But then, I remembered something. The real power of revenge isn't in destroying someone. It's in knowing that they can no longer touch you. That they are nothing more than a faded chapter in a book you've already finished reading. It's never too late to start over. Lucas, I said finally, my voice steady, but you'll have to do it without me. And with that, I hung up. I stared out my office window, taking in the glittering skyline of the city I had conquered. This wasn't about him anymore. This was about me, my strength, my resilience, my ability to rebuild, to rise, to turn pain into power. Lucas Miller was nothing more than a footnote in my story. And I was just getting started. Lucas's downfall should have been the end of the story. It should have been the final chapter in a book I was ready to close. But life has a funny way of keeping things interesting. Just when I thought I had moved past it all, another twist was waiting, one I never saw coming. A week after Lucas's desperate phone call, I received an unexpected visitor. My assistant knocked on my office door, peeking inside with a wary expression. Emma, there's someone here to see you. He says it's urgent. I sighed, rubbing my temples. The past few days had been a whirlwind, closing deals, networking with high-profile clients, and making sure my business continued to thrive. The last thing I needed was another ghost from my past. Who is it? She hesitated. It's a lawyer. Says he represents Lucas. That got my attention. I took a deep breath, straightened my posture, and nodded. Send him in. A tall, sharply dressed man entered my office, carrying a briefcase that probably cost more than most people's rent. He looked like the type who only handled high-stakes cases, the kind of lawyer Lucas used to be. "Ms. Carter, thank you for seeing me," he said smoothly, taking a seat across from me. "I'll get straight to the point. My client, Lucas Miller, is in serious legal trouble. His assets are frozen. His reputation is in ruins. And now, with these new allegations surfacing, he's facing potential jail time." I arched an eyebrow. "And that's my problem because he's desperate," the lawyer admitted. "He needs a character witness, someone to testify that he's not the fraud the media is painting him to be. Someone who knew him before his downfall." I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was so absurd that for a moment, I thought this had to be some kind of joke. "Let me get this straight," I said, folding my arms. "Lucas, the man who tried to ruin me, who left me with nothing, who spent years looking down on me, now wants me to save him? Is that what you're asking?" The lawyer adjusted his tie, clearly uncomfortable. "I know how this sounds. But Mr. Miller believes you are the only person who can help him." "Well, he believes wrong." I stood up, signaling the conversation was over. "Tell Lucas he finally got what he deserved." I expected that to be the end of it. But life, once again, had other plans. That same night, as I was locking up my office, my phone buzzed with an anonymous message. "You think it's over? Think again." A chill ran down my spine. I glanced around the empty office, suddenly feeling like I was being watched. The message had no sender, no context. But I knew one thing for sure. Someone didn't want me to walk away from this story just yet. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. The thrill of the unknown. I had spent so long building my empire, securing my success, making sure I was untouchable. But now, it seemed like the past wasn't just knocking at my door, it was kicking it down. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that when life throws a challenge your way, you don't run from it. You face it head on. I wasn't just going to watch this unfold. I was going to take control. Again, Emma knew the moment she saw the headlines that this wasn't just about Lucas anymore. Someone with real power was pulling the strings. Prominent real estate agent under investigation. Did she sabotage her ex-husband? It was laughable. Really, she had built her entire career on integrity. Yet now, the media was spinning a story that painted her as some kind of vengeful mastermind. But she wasn't angry. No, she was ready. She had fought her way out of rock bottom before. And this time, she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was about to expose something far bigger than Lucas's fragile ego. Her first move was to dig deeper into Richard Donovan, the billionaire who had been backing Lucas from the shadows. She had always heard whispers about his unethical business practices. But now, she needed proof. She reached out to a few trusted sources. And what she found was even worse than she had imagined. Richard wasn't just funding Lucas's legal defense. He had been using Lucas's law firm to launder money, filtering millions through shell companies while keeping his own name clean. And now that Lucas was on the verge of collapse, Richard was trying to silence Emma before she uncovered the full truth. Too late. Emma assembled her legal team, gathering every scrap of evidence she could find, emails, financial records, even testimonies from former employees who had seen Richard's dirty dealings firsthand. But Richard was smart. He had layers of protection, lawyers who could make problems disappear, and enough money to drag out a lawsuit for years. So Emma did what she did best. She went public. She arranged an exclusive interview with one of the most influential investigative journalists in the city. Someone who had been trying to take down Richard for years but never had enough evidence to make it stick. "Until now, I'm not here to defend myself," Emma said, staring straight into the camera. "I'm here to expose the truth." She laid it all out, the financial corruption, the intimidation tactics, the way Lucas had been nothing more than a pawn in a much bigger game. She provided documents, recorded conversations, hard proof that Richard had been orchestrating everything. And then, she did something no one expected. "Mr. Donovan, I know you're watching this," she said, her voice steady. "You think you can control the narrative, that your money and power will protect you. But this time, you underestimated the wrong woman." By the time the interview aired, the damage was irreversible. Public outcry erupted. law enforcement agencies launched a full-scale investigation into Richard Donovan's financial empire. Lucas, realizing he had been nothing more than a disposable asset, panicked and tried to cut a deal, offering to testify against Richard in exchange for a reduced sentence. But Emma wasn't done yet. She had one final move to play. She reached out to an anonymous whistleblower, someone inside Richard's empire who had been waiting for the right moment to betray him. And when the time was right, she delivered the final blow. A confidential document exposing Richard's largest illegal transaction yet was leaked to federal investigators. And this time, even his money couldn't save him. Within 48 hours, Richard Donovan's empire came crashing down. The stock market plummeted, investors pulled out, and by the end of the week, he was arrested on federal fraud charges. And Emma? She didn't just win, she changed the game entirely. Emma knew this was the endgame. Lucas was cornered, Richard was falling, but there was one last move to make, the final confrontation. The press was relentless. Headlines splashed across every major news outlet. Billionaire Richard Donovan arrested in fraud scandal. Former attorney Lucas Miller implicated in corruption scheme. Emma watched from her office, sipping coffee as she scrolled through the news. She should have felt relief. But there was one last thing left to do. A press conference had been scheduled, one that Richard's legal team had arranged in a last-ditch effort to control the damage. He was expected to make a statement, deny the allegations, spin the story one last time before the inevitable. But what no one knew, except Emma, was that Lucas had already flipped. The day before, she had received a call. Not from Lucas, but from his lawyer. "My client is ready to make a deal. He's willing to testify against Donovan in exchange for leniency." Emma had laughed. "Leniency? Lucas tried to ruin my life. Why should I help him now?" "Because he's desperate. And desperate men make mistakes. This is your chance to end it for good." And so, she agreed to nothing more than a front-row seat to the downfall of the men who had once thought they could destroy her. The conference hall was packed with reporters. Cameras flashed. Microphones were adjusted. Emma stood at the back, watching as Richard's legal team set up, his spokesperson clearing his throat, preparing to read a carefully crafted statement. But before he could get a word out, Lucas appeared on the screen behind him, a live video feed broadcasted across every major news network. "I know many of you know me as Lucas Miller, former attorney, former business partner of Richard Donovan," he began, his voice strained but clear. "And I am here to tell the truth." Gasps echoed through the room. "For years, I was complicit in Donovan's dealings. I saw things I should have reported, signed documents I should have questioned. But the truth is, I was never in control. Richard Donovan doesn't just bend the law, he erases it. And anyone who stands in his way, he destroys them." The room erupted into chaos. Richard's legal team scrambled, but it was too late. Lucas had already turned himself over to the authorities, and in exchange, he had provided enough evidence to ensure Richard would never see the outside of a boardroom again. Emma didn't smile. She didn't cheer. She simply watched as the men who had once underestimated her were dragged into the abyss they had created for themselves. In the days that followed, Emma's name was cleared. Her real estate empire soared to new heights. Clients flocked to her, and her name became synonymous with resilience, intelligence, and strength. Lucas? He took a deal, pleaded guilty in exchange for a lighter sentence. But the world would never forget what he had done. He would live the rest of his life as a disgraced man. Powerless and forgotten. Richard? He was finished. A lifetime of lies, corruption, and manipulation had finally caught up to him. And he would spend the rest of his days fighting a losing battle in court. And Emma? She walked away from it all, victorious, untouchable, and free. One evening, as she stood in her penthouse, looking out over the city she had conquered, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You did good, Emma, but you and I both know this was never just about them. There's always a bigger game to play." She stared at the screen, heart pounding, because for the first time in a long time, she wasn't just looking at the past. She was looking at the future. And she was ready for whatever came next. At its core, this story isn't just about revenge, it's about resilience. It's about refusing to let betrayal define you. About standing tall even when the world tries to break you. Emma's journey proves that success is the best revenge. But more importantly, that true power comes from knowing your worth and never letting anyone take it away. Now, I want to hear from you. Did you enjoy Emma's story? Comment 2 if you loved it. Or 7 if you think it could have ended differently. And if you've ever had to fight for what's yours, hit that like button, because we all know that life isn't about what happens to you. It's about how you rise after the fall. And don't forget, subscribe to the channel so you never miss another story like this. Who knows, the next one might just be even better. Rocket fire.